Welcome to Chai After Dark, everyone. This is Shabnam, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Huma. Huma, how was your week?
It was a really interesting week, to say the least. Just processing everything that's going on. We released our first episode.
Yeah.
I've never actually co-hosted an episode of a podcast. I've been on as a guest, but co-hosting it is a very different animal. So just, kind of riding the waves right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. My week was kind of crazy. I have been doing a lot of podcasting. I podcasted with Reality Bio with Robin, and we talked about different reality stars. Next week, she's publishing Katie Maloney and Lisa Vanderpump, who are very famous in the reality world. They're both associated with Vanderpump Rules, and so I'm excited about that. And I'm going to do some more stuff with her. And Reality Bio with Robin and us, Chai After Dark, will be doing a crossover couple of episodes on House of Stassi. So I think I'm going to let you sit that one out so you don't have to watch 8 hours of House of Stassi that you don't have context for, but it's my jam. I would watch it no matter what. So Robin and I are going to talk about that.
Yeah, so we'll be on the lookout for that. And just for everyone listening, I do not watch much reality TV. So when I do comment, just remember, if I ever participate in any of this, it's going to be from the perspective of someone who is not very familiar with this world. I do know who Lisa Vanderpump is.
Cool.
I feel like I would recognize her if I met her on the street, but maybe not. So who knows?
That's hilarious.
But we will be on the lookout for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we are actually going to partner on a fantasy novel podcast with a couple other folks. You can tell us about that. And in that one, I'm going to be the newbie that doesn't read much fantasy novels. So I will be the newbie for that one.
Yeah, that one, that's more my jam, guys. I am the sci-fi fantasy nerd, and that will be upcoming, and I am looking so forward to Shabnam's take on her first fantasy novel. We will be doing that in a collaboration with Arish from the End Goal podcast, and it is going to be MS Masood's novel, The Unnamed. This is a anti-colonial take on fantasy, which is very rare in this space. So yeah, it'll be fun.
I know. I'm excited. I already started the audiobook because I read too much for work. So I'm going to just listen to it.
I think, you know what? There is all this controversy about whether audiobooks are real reading, and I 100% think they are. So
okay, good.
Consume it however you can.
Awesome. Okay, before we get into it, Huma, we have to go to correction court because we are guilty. And I need you to tell us all of the correction court crimes we were guilty of in the last Odyssey episode. So this, you guys, is the stuff we got wrong, because we are going to do our best to correct ourselves when we find out we got things wrong and when the listeners tell us we got things wrong. So tell us what we're guilty of, Huma.
So we got a message from our biggest fan and probably my biggest critic, my younger brother, Junaid Qureshi. So putting your name out there, Junaid. And we need to course correct on some of the things that were pointed out by him. First of all, Sam Rockwell was not in Avatar. And you know what? We probably need to course correct it again because it is a Sam. I'm forgetting his last name. But Sam Rockwell is an amazing, iconic American actor. That was a big boo-boo on our part. Sam Rockwell, if you ever listen to this podcast, profusely, I apologize on the behalf of the Chai After Dark co-host. He's been in The Green Mile. He's been in Charlie's Angels. He was actually in the last season of The White Lotus.
Yeah, he was. He had that amazing scene with Walter. God, I'm so bad with names. Walter Goggins. Yes. Goggins.
Walton.
Sorry. Okay. Walton Goggins. And yeah, it was, I think about that scene often and it was so amazing. So yeah, we're sorry. Yeah. Sam Rockwell.
So we're sorry, Mr. Rockwell. Please Yeah, forgive us. Secondly, there was actually, according to Junaid, so if he's wrong, you guys, and we should have probably confirmed it too, but if he is, come after him. There's actually no CGI, I think, used in the Odyssey. So we were kind of maybe a little
Ooh.
iffy on that. Yeah. So he pointed that out. And then something that I suspected we were saying incorrectly, but I didn't want to come off as the know it all because I know I have those tendencies. Argus the dog was present in the original epic, the one that
Oh.
kind of Telemachus, he observes the interaction between Odysseus and the dog, and that's what kind of tips him off as that's my daddy. So
Oh.
and
Wow. Okay.
yeah, so he was in the original epic. He was there. And then one last shout out to all of the great theaters that are experiencing a resurgence in attendance this year. The blockbuster summer is back. We want more movies like this, shot on an epic scale. It is an
Yeah.
experience. So, people, when you can, I know it's not always so affordable, but try to go and see these movies in the theaters. It's a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that. It's awesome.
but
Yeah. I
yeah,
hadn't been for years to the movie theater, and it was wonderful to go.
really years?
Yeah. Maybe since like COVID.
No, you're kidding.
Yeah. Because I have a great couch. You've been to my house. I'm like,
Yeah, no, you do.
so
But you know what? I think it's because you're not so into those like Marvel epic
yeah,
type
that's right.
movies, right? Where
Yeah.
the viewing experience is just so different. I used to go to the movies all the time. Then I became a mom, and it's a little bit harder, to
But
go
it's
to the
also like I feel like with kids, it can be like a thing to do, like for the Marvel movies or once they get to a certain age, I guess.
once they get to it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have seen the uh the Sony animated Spider-Man movies together as a family. But
Nice.
well, I'm glad. I mean, yeah, it's a different experience, right? Seeing it in the big like the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was wonderful. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll do this a few more times. So,
I'll let you know which movies you should do it for. How's that?
okay, good. Yes. Yes. I
Because
love that. I'll
sometimes you have
take,
to do the happy compromise.
yeah, definitely. So, should we get into the topic of this week's episode?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Please start.
Yeah, so today we are going to be talking about Murder 101, which is number one documentary on Prime. And I saw this and I was like, Kuma, we have to talk about this. And so, just first off, what did you kind of think of it?
My mind was blown. I am not a murder pod documentary person. In
Hmm.
fact, I think I tease a lot of our friends. I tease you about it.
Hmm.
What is this macabre fascination with this? Um, but, I am so open to trying new things. I think it's good for our brains. This was such a I hate saying that it was such a pleasant surprise because of the dark nature of what they were talking about, but the
Yeah.
way they went about this, oh, it's chef's kiss. It was amazing.
So I'll set the stage a little bit. We started out with Mr. Campbell. One of his students from past years says he's like a weird, crazy teacher, but everyone wants to be in his class. He's a high school teacher in a more of a rural part of Tennessee. And one of his previous students, Will Bowers, talks about him and is still connected to his class because in 2017 he started teach his sociology class through looking at a cold case. And the cold case is about the murders of redheads in their area. He's decided that he wanted to take this more real life approach to sociology. And that's how we set the scene. So, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that he views himself as being a not really influential person from like the hierarchy of influence of the world. But he makes this comment of comparing himself to a rat on a ship. And he's like, if the rat gnaws at the right wire, maybe he can change the course of the ship, which I thought was really interesting because people get really complacent and they're like, there's 7 billion people in the world. What can I do? And this was an interesting take on that.
It was a great take on I think the power of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Because it's so easy to be able to minimize the impact. We ourselves minimize and diminish the impact that we can have. And then that can lead to complacency and laziness and lack of effort. And then nothing will happen. But it just takes the actions of one person. And maybe it's a small change, but when you put all those small changes together, those small actions, you might be able to leverage something into something bigger, which is what this amazing teacher, Mr. Campbell, does.
Yeah.
And I need to do a little bit of a call out to Marvel in that Mr. Campbell,
Yeah.
he's describing this rat example. For all of the nerds out there, and for all the non-nerds, because a lot of people watched Endgame, do you guys remember when Ant-Man, he's in that other dimension, and there's a little tiny rat in the time machine, and the rat is scurrying along on the controls, and he hits a certain button or a lever, and that's what brings Ant-Man back. And if that rat did not do that, the whole movie of Endgame may not have occurred. So when Mr. Campbell was talking about that, I was like, you're the rat from Endgame with intentionality, though. Because that little rat was
Yeah.
just doing it. You know, I was like, you're an
Yeah.
intentional rat. I love that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think this was great. I did want to just bring out one
Yeah.
thing about this documentary that I thought was so interesting is he is teaching sociology to these students in real life. And at the same time, this documentary, I think, is teaching us something about sociology.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
because I'm a big person on definitions, I really wanted to know, we throw terms like sociology, anthropology around, and I was like, what exactly is sociology? Let's first establish that for our listeners. So I looked it up because yes, that's me. Sociology is the study of human society, social behaviors, and the ways that groups interact with each other in a more modern social sense. Whereas anthropology is a holistic study of humans and ancestors across time and space. So he's literally through this murder investigation, there's so much, and we're going to dive into it, commentary on how we view people, how we process information, empathy,
Yeah.
um, our governmental systems, our police organizations. Like it's literally sociology within sociology. Like the
Yeah.
students are getting it, and we, the viewers, are also getting a lesson in sociology, which I thought was just, I mean, again, very well done.
Yeah. I always kind of use them interchangeably, like
We all
sociology,
do.
anthropology.
We all
Yeah.
do. We all do. And so
Yeah.
it was really like, I was like, you know what? I'm not actually going to just look it up and
Yeah.
really cement these definitions. Ask me a week from now, I'm not going to remember whatsoever, but I'm remembering for this moment in time.
Yeah. So then we meet the kids. We first meet Andrew Barnett. He's now a senior. When he was a junior, he did a piece on how the school only has one window. And they show like a little clip of his piece, and he says how prisoners have more windows than the kids do in this school. And then he also talks about how he feels like something's interesting is going on in Mr. Campbell's sociology class, so he wants to cover it for this year and he wants to take it. And so through him, we get introduced to the other kids, like Shelby Edmond. She's very smart. And Natalie Kodak. She's another redhead. So they never touched
Yeah.
on that, but there's a couple of redheads in the
There's
class.
a lot.
Uh,
There is.
yeah.
I noticed it too. And I was like, are they going to comment on that? And I'm like, what are those redheaded kids? Because these are still kids. They're still kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking as they're like delving into this, like
Yeah.
this topic of redheaded murders.
Yeah. And then we meet Austin Lyons. He's the boyfriend of Lacey. And Lacey, we get more introduced to her later in the episodes, but her mother passed away in a car accident when she was about 12, and she's doesn't really know the full story behind that. So that's part of her story as we go forward. And then we have Hannah, and I see you wrote, AKA the smart one, who is super into this. And this is the second time she's taken the class. This has been like 2 years of her high school experience, which is really cool. And then Crimson, last but not least, she's in the process of her adoption, and she had a really tough childhood. Her dad is in prison for drugs, and her mom, they don't really say much about her mom, but there was a hearing towards the end, which we'll get to. So I assume her mom is in the system as well.
Yeah, yeah. They don't say much about her mom. Yeah, towards the end, it's about permanent guardianship until the age of 18, and she's 17, so
Yeah.
she's right there. And I think she had
Yeah.
been with her foster family at that point for about 2 years.
Yeah.
when we so yeah, not much about her mom, more about her as a person, which actually I like that approach
Yeah.
because her trauma doesn't define her,
Yeah.
it's impacted her, but she has a very sharp, colorful personality that shines through.
Yeah.
And I don't think about her as the foster kid whose dad used drugs and is in prison. I think about all the other attributes that, her colorful hair, the
Yeah.
experience she's had with other kids, her finding confidence. I
Yeah.
really liked how the documentary highlighted these children in a way where they incorporated maybe their troubled lives, but it didn't let those troubled lives dominate who they were.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super super cool. As I said, they're focusing on the redheaded murders. He's teaching the kids how to see patterns and understand things about basically people through that, right? So he's telling them, let's look at patterns of the victims and patterns of the killer's behavior. And one thing that came up, which was super interesting, was he narrates to the viewer
Mhm.
that in the 1980s, there was an uptick in murders of women, particularly at a time that coincided with the truck industry deregulating. And I was like, that is so fascinating. So they used to have these big trucking companies that had probably, regulations and maybe more checks on who they hired and things like that. And that got done away with. And now you have these small businesses kind of hiring maybe with less checks. And all of a sudden, women start to die. And this kind of struck me because I'm a lawyer, I work in compliance, and you don't think that like deregulating something like that will lead to murder,
Oh my God,
it's,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then one of the investigators, I don't know, I don't remember
Hmm.
exactly what his title. Didn't he say something along the lines of that truck drivers are the number one serial killers?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't fact check that, but I was like, then they need to be regulated. Okay, come on.
Yeah.
like we need to then, if something comes from this documentary, can we get regulations back on board?
Yeah. I
Because
know.
if that is a true statistic, that is very scary.
Yeah. So Will Bowers, the previous student from the 2018 class, talked about that as well. And he said his dad is a truck driver, and his dad said you can pretty much get away with anything because you're on the road and like no one is really there. So, I mean, they have all these murder documentaries about the highways from like, California to Oregon because
Jesus Christ.
yeah. Sometimes when we're driving up to Mount Shasta, when me and Brian are, he'll be like, this is where all the girlfriends get dumped. 'Cause
Okay,
he means
Brian.
their body. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. 'Cause-
I was gonna comment that I actually in my extended family have cousins and maybe cousin-in-laws who are truck drivers.
Interesting.
And I'm like, do I need to be a little raised eyebrow? But I think Brian just took it to another level.
Yeah.
Why does he know this? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask him next time I see him.
Yeah, you should. So, Mr. Campbell, he first teaches them about how to make a FOIA request. This is basically teaching them what their rights are and how to access publicly available information and what they're allowed to ask for, which
What
is so
what
cool for a high school student. Hmm.
what does FOIA FOIA
FOIA.
stand? FOIA. What does that stand for? Do we know?
Yeah, they pronounce it FOIA. Yeah, it's a Freedom of Information Act, but it's a federal law.
I
So
see.
when he's saying FOIA to his students, because he's going to the state, it's actually the Tennessee Public Records Act that they're making these requests under, not
Yeah,
FOIA because
yeah.
that's federal, but all the states have something equivalent to the federal version. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he teaches them they're allowed to get police reports and medical examiner reports. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So this part, when he actually has these kids calling to
Hmm.
get these reports, I was like, Mr. Campbell, you brilliant, brilliant man. Look at you. You are giving these children a taste of real life, mundane, and raging adulting. Because
Yes,
how many of
yes.
us have called someone and been like, give me a freaking representative? I don't want to talk. Stop with the options. And then it just goes to dial tone or you get disconnected. And I was like, Mr. Campbell is he's teaching these kids like what the realities of adulting is, and I thought that was amazing, especially with this generation
Yeah.
because of the pandemic and various reasons, right? They might have difficulties with more social interaction. You know how they talk about Gen Z
Yeah.
not making eye contact. Good on Mr. Campbell. He is an excellent teacher.
Yeah, and my favorite was when Crimson was calling and she's like leaving a message in the middle of her message and it's like, if you're done with your
Oh,
message, but and I was like, "Oh my god, I feel so seen right now. That's happened to me so many times
right?
for stuff."
Every
Yeah.
adult who is called a phone company or
Yeah.
cable or whatever is like,
Yeah.
oh, I
Yeah.
know. Oh, yeah, yeah. That was I felt that one in my heart too, totally.
Yeah. He also teaches them that the
Mhm.
same person can treat people differently in different ways. So
Mhm.
they touch on this topic where like for murderers or psychopaths, I don't know exactly how they specified them here, but if they're smart enough and they give this measure of like their IQ being over 100, then they basically understand that they're different and they know how to like cover it up to remain undetected. So Mr. Campbell has his class listen to how different people describe Jerry Jones, the killer of one of the women, and the suspected serial killer for the other women. So he has them listen to audio evidence from the trial of Phyllis, who had a baby with Jerry, and after the baby was born, found out that he was actually her half brother. And then they also listened to David Davenport, who was a Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agent who interviewed Jerry Jones. So Phyllis talks about how he was very caring, he's a good provider, but that his favorite saying was, "Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies." I was like,
Yeah.
that's a clue, you know?
No, that was Phyllis practicing a little bit of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
We are compartmentalizing some knowledge so that we can continue to have this family with this Jerry guy. Is it Jerry Jones or Johns? Like
Jerry Johns.
there were so many J's. I was like, okay.
No,
But
yeah, I think it's Jerry Johns. Yeah.
Jerry, okay. So he that was Phyllis. That came out of honestly, I was not expecting that twist that she
Yeah.
was his half sister.
Yeah.
And didn't you say that the doctor said that, hey, your baby's normal, so just forget about this aspect of incest?
Yeah. I think
What
that
is going
because
on here?
yeah, I mean, well, because she said she went to the doctor to ask about her baby because she was worried about her baby. So maybe the
Yeah.
doctor was like, okay, if there's nothing wrong with your baby, then
Just
leave it.
shh, just leave. Yeah, just. I mean, this is why we have those stereotypes and of um. How did they pronounce it? Appalachia. I always said
Appalachia. Appalachia, right?
Appalachia. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
think
how they
so.
pronounce. For some reason, I've always said it Appalachia.
Oh, okay.
But we have established that I am the butcherer of words and names. Um, but this is where those stereotypes come, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I
you
mean, we have
know,
them too in our culture. So, I mean,
we do too.
yeah.
I mean, frankly,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I was like, you know what? Cousin versus half brother,
Yeah. That's a
huge
different
difference.
level.
Huge
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that one was that kind of came out of left field for me. We did talk, you did mention a little bit about the IQ over 100, and
Uh
they
huh.
brought up like narcissism, sociopathy, and psychopathy.
Uh huh.
This kind of goes back to the earlier thing about sociology versus anthropology. I'm not a forensic psychiatrist. I'm not as well versed in that world. I've been educated on it like during my residency, but if we wanted to just quickly touch upon the
Yeah.
narcissist,
Let's do it.
sociopath and psychopath because I feel like it's going to get asked at some point. And so
Mm-hmm.
just to set like, clear expectations. Narcissistic personality disorder is in the DSM, which is kind of the psychiatric go to Bible, Quran, whatever you want to, whatever book of choice. Um, and narcissist, that term is thrown around a lot in pop culture. From a clinical perspective, this is somebody who is an empty well of a person, someone who does not have a secure sense of self, if any sense of self. And so how they interact with the world is all related to validating that sense of self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it could either be in grandiose behaviors, it can be like self victimization.
Mm-hmm.
These people are capable of empathy to a certain degree. There's this great article, if people want to look it up on the internet, about the differences between these three. And the author, who is a therapist, divides empathy into two, like cognitive empathy and affective empathy. Cognitive empathy being the ability to read what someone is feeling, which is a
Mm-hmm.
super skill because
Yeah.
it's the affective empathy, which is the ability to experience the other person's feelings. If those two are
Mm-hmm.
not intertwined, you have what we call a psychopath, which is the most
Mm.
extreme, severe form, not of narcissism, but just, I would say, about maybe antisocial personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
where they have a psychopath has the cognitive empathy, like they can read what you're feeling, but they don't have
Mm.
affective empathy. They don't actually feel it. And then that
Yeah.
makes them very manipulative. They can be very charismatic. The psychopaths are usually the the planned murderers. They're the ones who are going to cause intentional pain. It's not reactive. It is pre-planned,
Strategic.
thoughtful, proactive. Yeah, strategic,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Interesting.
Whereas the sociopath is somebody who has a disregard for other people's rights, for their feelings. This a sociopath is going to be much more impulsive, chaotic. You'll see these people more in prison. They have a bigger deficit in empathy overall too, but these people can form warm, positive regard, specific attachments to certain people.
Interesting.
Whereas the psychopath cannot do that. And then,
Mm.
we don't need to go into the psychiatry lessons, but there's a lot more about the psychology behind this. What's interesting with Jerry, um, is that these murders start 2 weeks after he and his wife, who is a redhead, separate.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that, and, they're kind of like a triggering event, so to speak. And
Yeah.
how I mean, we don't know. They don't really delve into his psychology, which I think was a wise choice. But
Yeah.
it is interesting if someone wanted to kind of examine it from that perspective.
Yeah. One of the things that Phyllis says is that, oh, all these women kind of looked like me.
That
And I
was
was like,
creepy.
so
Ugh.
creepy. Yeah.
That was so
Uh,
creepy. And then finding
yeah.
out that your wife is your half sister.
Yeah.
And that means your mom covered this information up.
Yeah. And I almost wonder if his half sister looked like his mom and this is some mommy
Hmm.
issue,
Some
you
mommy
know?
issues. That's what I was thinking too. I
Yeah.
was like, is this a trickle down effect? And then,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, the documentary doesn't spend too much time on that, but it is an interesting aspect. And I think it's good to note the differences between the three.
Yeah. To clarify, so narcissists of the three are capable of having the most affective empathy, like feeling the most empathy. Is that right? And then sociopaths less, and then psychopaths none. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
I mean, I wouldn't, I would say psychopath, none.
Yeah.
A narcissist. Yeah, I don't want to say narcissist versus a sociopath because sociopath kind of comes into another personality disorder known as antisocial personality disorder. I personally would not want to comment on who has more empathy or not because it's more, I would say it's
Case
just the
by
way.
case.
Okay, well, I would say a narcissist, they view the world through a lens of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have, it's like a bottomless, empty well,
Mm.
right? And they're just trying to fill
Versus a
that.
sociopath is more impulsive.
A sociopath is more they don't really care about other people's rights or feelings. They feel very
Okay.
justified like in not doing that. So I guess the causation, the
Is
origin
different. Okay.
is a little different. So I don't really want to comment. Um,
Yeah.
I don't, the court of corrections, all these like therapists are going to come
Yeah.
after me. So, which I welcome. We welcome that, guys. Like please give us
Yeah.
feedback. We are always striving to do better.
Yeah. And so they show the contrast here with David Davenport, who, like I said,
Yeah.
was the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agent who interviewed Jerry Johns. And he says that he had no soul and no conscience and he was an evil person, which I don't feel like that's as great of a lesson, although I feel like evidence wise, you have these two clips. So it's a good thing to illustrate to the kids. But someone that's from law enforcement that's interviewing him, gonna have also a skewed perspective, right? So
Yes.
yeah, it would
Yes.
have been interesting to see sort of someone maybe that he'd met on the road who had a different impression of him, but like
Well,
they might not
but
have that.
but Linda Shockey,
Right.
Linda?
Yeah,
She,
yeah.
yeah, isn't she kind of provides that perspective like later on, doesn't she? Where she
Yes,
says
she
that he,
does.
right?
And
Um,
you're right.
and
You're right.
I think with David Davenport, Jerry Johns doesn't have to turn it on for him anymore. Like that's where the mask drops,
That's true. Oh, you're right.
right?
You're right. Yeah.
He's not trying to manipulate this, Davenport. He's not gonna, So it's almost, again, we don't know, but I'm just wondering if he's just like, F it, I don't care anymore. I'm not,
Yeah.
I will just show you who I truly am. He is manipulative. He's trying to get something from his wife, from his victims. Like he's trying to lure them
Hmm.
in, right? So the mask is
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So I think you were talking about, was it Lisa Nichols, right? There's a
Yes.
Linda and a Lisa, and one of them's last name is Shockey and one of them's last name is Nichols. So as we go through it, I'll correct it. I think it's Linda Shockey and Lisa Nichols. That's what it.
Yeah,
That's who it is.
Linda
Yeah.
Shockey is, I believe, the woman that they actually interviewed. She's the
Yeah.
only surviving victim of
Yeah.
this.
You're right. You're
This,
right.
yeah.
One of the other cool things he highlights for the kids is how the victims are portrayed in media. And he
Yeah.
does that in the context of Lisa Nichols. So the
Hmm.
headlines highlight her as a prostitute rather than a mother, a woman who was trafficked, or a member of society. And so this was really cool too, because I feel like this isn't an idea that I really got exposed to until college. And so it's so cool that he's making them think about this
Well,
now at
really,
this young
Shabnam, you
age.
didn't. When I was watching this, the
Uh-huh.
one thing that I thought about, like as you and I, I'm sure the listeners know, well, they
Yeah.
probably know for you, but we're both Muslim Americans,
Yeah.
and I feel when I was watching that how they dehumanized these women
Yeah.
who don't fit the respectable slot that society has created for women. I
Hmm.
honestly was like, that's what happens to Muslims in a different version too, right? And especially with
Yeah.
everything that's going on these days, is we are dehumanized, we are devalued,
Yeah.
we're seen as a monolith, right?
Yeah. So I get what you're saying and I agree. My point is more that I felt that, but it
Yeah,
wasn't articulated to me and taught
right,
to me like
correct.
that's a thing, you know?
Yes,
And so
yes, yeah,
when I got exposed to that in college, it was validating, right? Of something that I'd
yes,
like felt
yes,
earlier than that. And it's good that they get this earlier, especially being from these small towns where they have parents with rough stories and things like that, for them to be able to not internalize that about themselves.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was one thing, I feel like the documentary was very focused on a certain group of people, which I think is fine. That's,
Mm-hmm.
it's good. You can take this lesson about
Mm-hmm.
dehumanizing women that are considered less than
Mm-hmm.
and generalize it to so many other groups of people. Like there's
Yeah.
so much to be learned from here. Um, it was yeah, that recurring theme just hit so hard because that's
Mm-hmm.
where the beginnings of teaching someone empathy also start. When I was watching it, and I was like, you know what, like it's first of all, it's there's this theme of, you know women are victims and we are dehumanized, and it starts as, like from the beginning of time probably, but the Jack the Ripper came up in,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind when I was thinking about like the
Yeah.
Whitechapel murders, the Canonical Five, the prostitutes that Jack the Ripper went after.
Yeah.
Again, women who are, thrown away by society, women who are not sympathetic, women who have dared to not be proper, people who are not
Right.
going to be missed, the easy victims, and being able to just not even see them as humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
that's what came up in my mind was like the whole Jack the Ripper thing.
Yeah. So, Mr. Campbell, he also works with the students to then make a video where they talk about why this case is so important to them and why they might want to talk to Linda Shockey. Right. So Linda Shockey is the sole survivor, like you said, of the redheaded killer. And it's funny, not it's funny, but it's sad that she's actually not a redhead. She dyed her hair.
I know that was
Yeah.
so like I was like, oh my god, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that one I
Yeah.
was just, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was that was bad. I was like, that poor woman. Ugh.
Yeah. And so they reach out to her with this heartfelt video, and he basically has them write down lists of questions that they want her to answer and respond to, and she actually agrees to do a Zoom call with them. This is so impactful that he's like arranging all
Mm-hmm.
this for them. What a pivotal experience as a young person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he ends the documentary by saying, "But what do I know? I'm just a like a public school teacher or something like that,"
Yeah.
and that broke my heart because no, teachers are amazing. I
Yeah.
know I can speak personally for myself that I can even, I know the names of the teachers that have impacted me deeply.
Yeah.
And, you know, for him to just think outside of the box and do this for his students, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's,
I know.
you know, talk about learning something and being able to carry that forward for the rest of your life.
Can I ask you, do you know how old he was?
He was a year younger than me. I'm
Okay, yeah, you
assuming.
caught that right. Because I,
I'm
I was
assuming,
watching,
yeah.
yeah,
I'm
and
assuming.
I told Brian, I was like, look at him. I was like, how old do you think he is? And then Brian was like, maybe like 50. I was like, oh, okay, you got it kind of close. Because he looks, I think because of the white beard, I just assumed he was like maybe 55 or something like that. But then, yeah, if you look at his skin and he's in pretty good shape, like, yeah, I was like, okay, you're younger. I was
Yeah,
taken by surprise at the end. Yeah.
because he's class of 96.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, oh, Mr. Campbell's like younger than me. So, I was like, that's okay. We're good at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's funny. And so then he teaches them about controls and variables. So in the context of this investigation, so he says Tina Farmar, she is what they would call a control because she's the
Yes.
only victim who's been proven to be killed by Jerry Jones. And
Yes.
so they look at the case and what happened in there and try to compare her case to the other cases. So they discover that 2 years after her murder, they actually threw away all of the DNA evidence they collected, the body fluids, the hair, etc., and which could have been tested as DNA later. Yeah.
Is that a thing? Is there like a statute of limitations on how long you keep evidence?
No. Like you
What
can
the,
keep evidence for you just have to it's a
what the hell?
cost, right? You have to maintain it and like keep it properly and like keep the chain of custody and all that. And so you do find these cases where they've just destroyed evidence or whatever. And it's
Why?
like,
Because these,
why?
is it because these women are strippers and prostitutes and just, they're not?
I mean, I don't know. Like sometimes in certain cases, because I worked with the Innocence Project for a limited period of time and I've been interested in following some of their cases over time. In some instances, it kind of seems a little insidious, like they didn't want it tested. But in some cases, I think it might just be like carelessness or negligence, or like sometimes they move buildings and the evidence gets like
Yeah.
degraded or, things like that. So there's, you do have to try and put an effort and there's a cost to maintaining the evidence. But I mean, I think it should be maintained.
I think it should be maintained. And I mean, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it. I wonder if there really is a little bit of who the victims are
Mm-hmm.
and how that comes into play. I mean, these are poor, stigmatized white women. We have
Yeah.
the statistics for how much media coverage, how many resources are given to murders of women of color,
Yeah.
you know, um, of people of color, of Black people too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, we know that there is a discrepancy. I'm not going to, I'd have to look up the exact statistics. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I'm just wondering, is there an element of negligence there because in the back of their minds, or like a little bit of kind of, well, I mean, these women specifically are the dregs of society. Who's going to really care? And if
I
Mr.
think
Campbell hadn't raised all of this, would this have come to the forefront?
probably not. Right.
Right.
I think you're really right. I think there's a class element and a race element in the way cases are handled. But I think within the class element, there's like, well, if these are not people whose husband and mother and
Mm-hmm.
siblings are all going to be like fighting with their money and resources to get to the bottom of this, then there's less, motivation to push these old cases, I guess, so
There's
there's
less
somewhat of
pressure
pressure.
because
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
because the victim doesn't fit into a category that is desirable. The
Right.
media would not have given these women, and specifically the last one that we'll talk about, the coverage they
Tracy.
did. Yeah, Tracy,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for Mr. Campbell's class.
Mm-hmm.
And think about all the other victims out there who are women of color.
Mm-hmm.
These
Yeah.
are poor white women. And
Yeah.
so it just, when they said that they just threw away the evidence, I was just like, well, why are we surprised at this point?
Yeah,
It's just,
it's really sad.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I also felt like I think the documentary did a good job of also highlighting the people in authority who actually do care, right?
Yeah.
Um, I did like that nuanced approach because I sometimes think we can paint in broad strokes,
Yeah.
and nuanced discussions I think are always the better ones.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are definitely a lot of people in law enforcement, in prosecution, that are really trying to do right
Yeah,
by society and the victims and everything. So,
yeah,
yeah. So then we hear about Lori Pinnell, and she's a victim who, once they look at her case, they realize, like, hey, it doesn't align with these other patterns and the other evidence in the way that Jerry Johns killed the control victim, Tina Farmar.
hmm
So they basically start to struggle with this idea that they put in so much effort hoping to build this case against Jerry Johns, and now it's not really coming together.
hmm
So, this was one of the most fascinating things to me because it highlights this flaw in our justice system, which is that sometimes prosecutors can feel the same way, and prosecutors and some law enforcement get really blinded on a certain lead they have. So, one of the big cases in the media where we see this a little bit is the Adnan Syed case.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the prosecutors in that office have resisted testing the DNA from the victim. So, it
See,
wasn't thrown out, but they're resisting testing it. Thankfully, and I'm not, people have different feelings about his guilt or innocence. I am just very convinced that his case was handled very poorly. And I think it's wrong that they're not testing the DNA. But this idea was highlighted really well here, and you see him getting the kids really comfortable with this idea that, like, you do need to follow the evidence, and that was so cool.
follow the evidence and stay flexible and open-minded, and this is
Mm-hmm.
something that actually comes up in when I do therapy with patients,
Mm-hmm.
is having cognitive flexibility. And sometimes that comes at the compromise, which is really painful, of the concept of closure. Because in real
Mm.
life, you might not get closure. You might have to
Yeah.
live with something just not neatly tied up into a cute little package, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
trauma, whether it's a murder investigation. And that's a very uncomfortable reality to exist in. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why kind of the underpinning of the psychology behind, we're trying to make this narrative fit, is because you want to
Mm-hmm.
provide closure to the family members. You want to provide closure for yourself. You want to be able to say, I put the period at the end of the sentence. Now we can move forward. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, you're moving forward with this very uncomfortable piece just
Mm-hmm.
existing within you. But that's reality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, Mr. Campbell, kudos to you. Teaching these kids at such a young age, because this is something adults really grapple with, is having flexibility and living with the idea that closure might not happen the way you think it's going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Piggybacking off of your point,
Yeah,
he
of
does this
course.
really cool exercise with them about how they think the class has changed them over the course of the semester, because now they're approaching their Christmas break, and they kind of look back at how they've changed over the course of these last few months. And their answers are really interesting. They all kind of relate back to empathy and the same things we've been talking about, that the class humanized these victims for them. They started, thinking about how victims are portrayed in the media versus who they are as people, and that they focused much more on themselves at the beginning of the year, and their goals are more around what they can contribute to society and how to help others. And then Mr. Campbell says a really interesting thing. He says, a friend of his told him everyone's goal should be the same, to find the heaviest thing you can and then lift it. I don't know, stuff like that. It just makes me want to cry. I'm like, oh, he's such a
Right.
good teacher.
Such a good teacher, right? And probably most likely a really good human too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, that like struck me too, because I feel like that's a series of what life is, lifting the heaviest thing you can. And then you think, like, okay, maybe I'm good for a while. And then, no, there's something heavier, you know?
Yeah, and your
Uh,
capacity might vary
yeah.
in terms of what you can lift. At times, it might be you might be stronger. You might to be able to lift something heavier, and at times you might not. And people's
Yeah.
capacities to lift whatever their weight is differ also. One thing they didn't really touch upon, but what I would just say as a psychiatrist is giving yourself and others grace in terms
Yeah.
of what can be lifted and when it can be lifted.
Yeah. So this thing comes up a lot in the documentary where there's like a theme of empathy, right? And so
Yeah.
and it's very in this documentary intertwined with confidence. Like these kids seem to be gaining confidence from their ability to empathize. So going back to our conversation about narcissistic personality disorder, sociopaths and psychopaths, I just kind of struck me, does a lack of empathy make you more insecure? Does like empathy actually like foster confidence?
I mean, I think definitely empathy fosters confidence in the person who it's directed towards. You know, personally, if you have empathy for someone who's struggling, that person who's struggling is going to feel seen, validated, heard, and they're going to feel most likely better about that, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
Less of a freak, less of the outsider, which then in turn will hopefully increase their confidence. Having empathy yourself, how does that increase in confidence? I would say that it gives you perspective, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I was on another podcast, and we were talking about, I don't know, talking about something,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, it was one of it came in terms of connection, which empathy can be a component of that, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
connection with other human beings it's one of the pillars of mental and physical health. That if if I can put myself in someone else's shoes and I can maybe judge them less harshly,
Mm-hmm.
that might have a turnaround effect, and I judge myself less harshly.
Oh, that's
Like
an
so
interesting point.
so the example that I use all the time is, imagine we've all seen someone trip,
Yeah.
right? Um and some of us, depending on who you are, right?
Yeah.
Some of us might laugh at the person who
Yeah.
falls. Some might go and offer help. Some might do nothing. They just walk right by, right? Um,
Yeah.
but in most cases, unless you are, you know, unless you need a higher level of intervention, most of us are going to go about our day and we're going to forget about the person who tripped in
Mm-hmm.
public, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine you are the person who tripped in public.
Yeah.
How much are you going to sit there and dwell on that throughout the day? That, oh my God, that was so embarrassing. I'm so humiliated. People saw me. They were laughing, right? Like
Yeah.
dwell on it. But the minute you reverse the roles, right? And you're kind of like, wait, but if I saw someone trip, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Like I might, maybe if I'm, not the nicest person, I might laugh.
Yeah.
Maybe I would actually feel bad for the person and go out and help them, right?
Yeah.
So when you can actually adopt that perspective of seeing things through people's eyes, I can see how that can build your confidence, right? Like, so that
Mm-hmm.
humiliating experience where I tripped in public,
Yeah.
now it no longer has that sting. It's decreased.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I can see, like, in that roundabout way, definitely how empathy towards whom it's offered fosters confidence in them, but also can foster confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a good thing all around.
Gosh, that just reminded me of when I was getting ready for my wedding and I was just like, okay, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip. I was just like, smile, don't trip as I was like
My
walking.
God. Oh my
'Cause I was,
God. Yeah. And then the kicking of the lenga so that you don't like
yeah.
that, the walk that you have to practice. Ugh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I
All
was
right.
like, people must be thinking, I don't know what people think you think when you're walking down the aisle, but to me, I was just like, smile and don't trip.
I
That's all I was
thought
like,
you looked beautiful and
oh,
radiant.
thank you. Oh, thank you. Good. Then
Yes.
it worked.
It totally worked. It totally worked. You know what I was thinking, like, yeah, the same thing. But I had a cousin come up to me at my wedding and
Mhm.
say to me,
Mhm.
you're making really weird faces, because I was so
Oh my God.
nervous. I
Oh gosh.
know. And I was like, you need a lesson in empathy.
Yes.
Because I was really, really nervous. And so I do this
Yeah.
like weird thing with my mouth when I get nervous. And so, um, yeah, I guess like so there's
I didn't
two.
notice it. I thought you looked
Thank
beautiful.
thank you. I appreciate it. But
Yeah.
see the difference and like what
Yeah.
feedback can do for you. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So, well, then speaking of relationships and empathy and all that, we see
Yeah.
Lacey and Austin and their love story and their relationship. One thing I thought was strange was they're together at this home, and you don't get a sense of whose home it was because Lacey's mom died. I'm like, is this a home of her family or something that she now lives in, and he lives there with her? But that was interesting. It was a missing piece of like whose home is this?
No, I think some details were left deliberately vague because let's not forget these are still children.
Yeah,
And
that's
we
true.
are delving deeply into, my mom was a drug addict, or my dad was a drug addict, or my dad is in prison, or my mom died. These are still children. And so
Yeah,
I think there was, I mean, I don't know, but I think
you're
maybe
right. Yeah.
intentionally there is a sense of vagueness, also maybe to protect deeper layers of identity. We don't want to know
Yeah.
exactly where they live or who they're living with. I had a feeling because sometimes I also had a difficulty kind of keeping things straight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that was done intentionally.
You're right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we learn that Lacey, she says that her mom did a lot of drugs when she was pregnant with Lacey and her
Mhm.
sister, and that her father is in and out of prison. And so she decides, after learning this stuff in Mr. Campbell's class, to take the second semester off and to go back to Oklahoma, I believe, which is where she lived with her mom, to see if she can find out what happened to her mom. Because, like I said earlier, her mom died in a car accident when she was 12, but she kind of fell out of this car, and the driver was her boyfriend. And so Lacey says that she's not really convinced that her mom fell. She's wondering if her mom was pushed, and so she wants to look into the case further. I saw that you have 3 days before her 12th birthday. Yeah, she was very like, I mean, that kind of stuff sticks in your
That
mind
kind
as a
of,
kid, right?
because now it's correlated with it's an anniversary, right? Like, so that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's something you will carry for the rest of your life because every time your birthday comes up, 3 days before, you're going to be like, that's when my mom died, which is just really sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. Um okay, you have a note here about Appalachian culture.
Well, yeah, because they talk a lot about the history of drugs and trauma in Appalachia. Um, and he himself seems a little bit he was sheltered from it, but I just
Mm-hmm.
back in 2005, for the listeners, if they want to do a deeper dive into this fascinating world, which I think, as we're from California, and I would say, people on the East Coast, and maybe even a greater portion of the Midwest, the Appalachia area, it's not that big, right?
Yeah.
There is a world there that is just on the surface very foreign to us. And I just, when I was watching this, I remembered this book that I read, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. Um,
Mm.
it was released in 2005, and it's about her upbringing in Welch, West Virginia. If anybody wants to do a deeper dive, go and read that. It's a harrowing, beautifully written tale of her
Mm.
upbringing. It was my first, I would say, glimpse into this culture that exists within the United States that many of
Yeah.
us are very divorced, are very separated from.
Right, right.
So that was
Yeah.
just a note. Yeah, that just came into
Yeah,
my head.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we see, I think his name is Mr. Elkins, I want to say, from
Mm-hmm.
the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And he comes to discuss Tracy Walker's case with the kid. So this is another person that Mr. Campbell has gotten to come and talk to them, which is super cool.
Yeah, I
Um,
really liked him. I really liked
mhm.
him.
Me too.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot. Like and I liked that he talked to them again. He was also focusing on, we need to follow the evidence and look at the evidence. Like, I really like that. He was really cool.
He was awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, like I said, he comes to talk to them about Tracy Walker's case, who initially was identified as baby girl Jane Doe because her body was so decomposed and she was so small that they couldn't identify her. And
Yeah.
so they didn't know if she was between like 9 or if she was 15 or what. And turns out she was 15. And
Yeah.
then he tells the kids they can come on a field trip with him to the crime scene, which is, yeah, I
Chills,
know.
chills, chills.
I know.
Right.
But I'm just like, yeah, I'm just like, this is such a cool class, you know? Like,
It's like, like you were like, this is a cool class. I was thinking that too, and I was like, would I want to be in this class? I don't know.
One thing I was thinking, um, not to bring up or to bring up class here,
Hmm.
pun I guess intended. If this type of class was taught in a wealthy neighborhood, I could see 9 million parents complaining about like, well, I don't know if I want my kid to see like this picture, and why are you taking them to that, and you know what I mean. So like, yeah, I don't know that
No, you're so
that
right.
struck
Because
me. Yeah,
Shabnam, I have a daughter, and that came to my mind. I was
yeah,
like, would I want my, she's not 15, 16 yet, but would I want her exposed to this? And these
yeah,
kids are already exposed to a lot. Some of them come from really rough backgrounds. And throughout the process of this class, if they themselves don't come from a rough background, they are sharing it with their friends. So these kids already have some exposure, right?
right.
Our kids, the way we're bringing up the next our generation, in our
Mm-hmm.
specific socioeconomic class, they're very privileged, and we're very
Yeah,
protective about what they
yeah,
can see and not see. And then there are these global crises that are happening to Muslims. There's the
yeah.
and having to filter that trauma out to them and expose them, but do it gradually. Shabnam, I might be one of those parents. I'm not gonna lie. As much of a psychiatrist as I am, and I'm all about like, I've lived in Pakistan and done all this stuff, and I'm very much a strong believer in exposure to this.
Yeah.
When I think about it, when it comes to my own kid, yeah, a little bit of that, we can maybe call it hypocrisy, does exist. I have to own it. Because at the same
Yeah.
time, I'm thinking, these are children. These are children.
Yeah. But it is so beautiful though, because, like we see with Lacey, this inspired her to look at her own mother's case, right? So, like,
Yes. Yeah.
if it feels very appropriate in this context. I thought this was so cool. My sister in law, I was like texting with her this morning, and I was about to text her, like, hey, you should watch this. And your older two kids that are like 14 and 16, I think they should watch. And then I was like, I don't know if she would want them to watch this. So then I was just like, okay, whatever. I'll just talk to her about it when I see her. So,
Yeah,
because,
yeah. You
yeah.
know, I think I wonder if you could do a sociology experiment like this, but maybe based on like poverty, right?
Yeah.
I think because this is so the murder of women, which
Yeah.
which women need to be aware of, like which and men
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue, right? Because I
Yeah.
totally like applaud Mr. Campbell for what he did. And at the
Yeah.
same time, when I think about it being applied to my own child,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No,
my
I
heart
know.
goes,
I know.
right? It's
Yeah.
interesting conversation to be had.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. The kids also get an interview with another law enforcement person named Robert Baker, who's a retired FBI behavioral analyst. And he talks to them about low risk victims versus high risk victims. This kind of plays into like the class stuff we've been talking about, where he
Yes.
says
Hmm.
low risk victims are like say a married woman with kids, and if something happens to her, it's probably the husband or boyfriend, right? That's what he
Yeah,
says.
I'm no, but
And
that's yeah,
yeah,
that's that I know is a fact. Okay,
right.
that I know is a
Yeah.
fact based on all the British crime mysteries that I watch.
Yeah.
So, I don't watch the
And
documentaries; I watch the fictionalized versions.
yeah. And then the high risk victims, he said they are women that maybe left home. They don't really have a place to stay. And they maybe are sex workers, and their suspect pool is really large. And
Mhm.
so it gets more challenging to solve their cases. And I wonder, you know, these kids, they're looking at these women from their town, and maybe some of their parents' situations, and thinking like, wow, like these are people that I care about, or people that I can relate to, or people that I'm related to, that would be defined as in this like high risk category. And that's like really intense too, I'm sure.
That's very intense. I mean,
Yeah.
some of their mothers, frankly speaking,
Hmm.
would probably fall
Yeah.
in that high risk victim. And my God, what a realization to have to internalize.
Yeah. Yeah. So he tells them he thinks there's actually a lot of Jerry Johns in their area, not just one. And so he talks about how there's a highway serial killer initiative to try to investigate who is killing all these women. And there's a lot of work left to be done. So next, they get to speak to Tracy's brother, Randy Walker, which was also cool. The kids, again, get this experience to kind of see his emotion and gain even more empathy about, how his sister's murder was not taken, investigated to completion, and he still does not have closure, and he's really grateful for these kids to get to look into it.
Yeah. And it was nice to see Tracy fleshed out more as a human being, as someone who did have people who loved her.
Mm-hmm.
She's not just this despondent runaway. She had a family who cared. We don't know what the details are, but however troubled they were, her life mattered, right? Like there are people who are bereft without her, and bereft because they don't know what happened to her, or what exactly, or who happened to her, I guess, more specifically.
Yeah. And so throughout this deep dive into Tracy's case, you kind of see the kids like processing this empathy they have had, and like processing the empathy they've gained, and then also kind of bonding with each other. And you kind of see how the different kids process things differently. Like Hannah, she cries to her friend, but then she's immediately like, I can't cry anymore. I need to go back to work and figure out what happened to her,
These kids are learning the tough lessons of being an adult.
Yeah.
You have to compartmentalize, and something bad happens, you still have to show up to work. Whether that's right or not, I'm not going to debate that, but that's
Yeah.
Like there's many lessons being learned.
Yeah. And then Andrew, the journalist student, he's processing, he goes fly fishing, and he's like journaling. And I was like, that is so cool. Like I can relate to that. I like to go hiking with friends and things like that. So that was super cool. But Brian came down when I was watching that part, and I was like, have you ever done this? The overall fishing? He's like, overall fishing. Yeah, that's what it's called. I was like, I grew up in the city. I don't know. It's like they wear overalls.
The only reason I know what fly fishing is because we had to read A River Runs Through It. They made a film adaptation with Aiden, somebody, and Brad Pitt in the 90s or early 2000s. You probably don't remember. That is the only reason I know what fly fishing is.
That's so funny.
That I know even what a fly is too. Or else I would also have been like, that is what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, wasn't some of the scenes jarring as like a Californian, like where we specifically reside in California? Like they're just skipping stones by this beautiful stream.
Yeah, and it's quiet. No one else is there.
Right? Yeah. I was like, I didn't have this fairy tale stream like by my house.
Well, like I have a lake near me, but people like to go there because it's so nice, and there's only one, like there's not that much in this area,
Yeah, right. Like, is the lake a real lake or is it a man-made lake?
I'm not sure. It's Lake Chabot. I think
I don't
it's
know.
real.
But that stream was not man-made. You know how like they have those like lake pond type things for certain complexes or neighborhoods?
Yeah.
That was a naturally occurring stream.
You're right. And Lake Chabot apparently isn't. I just Googled it. It's a man-made reservoir. So,
yeah. I mean, we have beautiful like nature stuff in California. That's what I call it, nature stuff. But it hits a little different in that area.
Yeah. So then he basically has the kids come up with ideas about how to get exposure to the case, and they run it by the TBI agents they've talked with, and so the kids suggest, wrapping a car and having like a plane fly a sign where, letting people know about Tracy's murder and what number they should call. And one kid has like a Grim Reaper idea of like putting Grim Reapers
Jesus
throughout
Christ.
So
was that McDuffie?
Yeah, I think so.
I love McDuffie.
Yeah.
Didn't he say something about Spider-Man too? I was like, all right, McDuffie.
Yeah.
He's
thinking outside the box. Yeah.
He's thinking so outside the box. I love it.
Yeah. But one of the other things they get the kids to do is interviews with local news media. And that ends up blowing up to where the kids get 22 million views across all platforms for their appearances. And it's funny because they're happy about it. But Shelby, who I guess her clips was one of the most seen ones, she also weirded out. She's like, That's weird. And I'm like, I totally get that, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God, girl. I get like if I get 500 views on I'm not on tweets but or Twitter, but like or X or whatever it's called, or on Threads. I'm like, oh my God, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. It's super cool.
Yeah.
Um, Now we're approaching the end of the school year and they're about to finish up, you know, they have like one more week or so. And he gives them a lesson that he said, resist the temptation to become slackers. I'm like, oh God, I feel so seen too. Cause like that, feel like I have to tell myself that often.
Oh my
You know?
God, all the time. It's like
Yeah.
activate sloth mode now. Come on, Mr. Campbell. Like when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, fine.
I know,
Fine.
right? Yeah.
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 Yeah. He's a very inspirational teacher.
Yeah. So then we see Lacey's story as well, like her story wrap up. She looks over the emails and the documentation with her boyfriend from Mr. Campbell and the reports that she got as well. And she starts to wonder what happened to her mother because she notices that her mom lived for about like 2 hours after the incident with the car. And so she reaches out to the investigator several times. And after persistence, she finally gets a hold of him and she talks to him. He doesn't know a ton, but she does get like a little bit of closure and some answers. And then she says that if it wasn't for Mr. Campbell teaching her what information she's entitled to obtain, she wouldn't have the confidence to be persistent and keep calling the police officer. I was just like, wow, that's so impactful.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's something she will carry, I hope, for the rest of her life, and something that we should all carry, right? Like, don't give up.
Yeah. And then we also see Crimson's story finalizing
Hmm.
where she goes again. This was like a little disjointed, and I think you're right. It's probably for privacy reasons and other things. She goes to a court with her foster parents. They say that her mother's there. She says that her mother hasn't known anything that's happened in the last 2 years. And then they come out kind of happy that she has this like permanent guardianship until she's 18. So we don't get a lot of details, but it's a happy ending and she's really happy. And the kids surprise her with a birthday cake for her
Oh my
birthday.
God, right?
Yeah.
Small gestures. Oh my God, small
Yeah.
gestures that go so far. Like,
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it. And I think it's
Yeah.
such a good lesson for all of us.
Yeah, and the kids go to prom and they graduate and then
Yeah.
everything's great. And then we see the text at the end that tells us as of October 2025, DNA testing has been submitted for testing in 2 of the 6 unresolved murders. So this is good news. I actually wanted to look for an update, but I didn't get to right before this. Do you happen to know if there's an update in the case?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find one in a couple minutes. So it looks like Jerry Johns remains tied to these cases,
Yeah. Yeah.
but obviously because he did kill Tina Farmar, but it looks like there is still pending cases and we don't have full closure on this. We will come back in correction court if we are wrong and we find something. So stay
Yeah.
tuned for that for the next
You
episode.
guys, please send us, like, if we misquoted something, misstated something, if I psychiatrically speaking misspoke, if Shabnam misspoke, legally speaking, please send us feedback.
Yeah.
We are here to learn with the rest of you guys. So
Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to make one shout out because there were so many themes of mental health throughout this documentary, especially with Andrew. Was that what the boy's name? Who the fly fisher?
Andrew.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Kudos to the documentary for showing, you know, mental health issues in young men, very
Yeah.
underrepresented, but very much a struggling group. I am a board member for Jiva Mental Health. It is a nonprofit dedicated to providing free subsidized services for people of South Asian origin and also destigmatizing all things related to mental health in the South Asian community. But anybody can participate in their services. But we have our annual gala coming up October 17th in Los Angeles. And if you are in the area, pre-sale is live. It will be ending August 15th. And I encourage people to attend. It is for such a good cause. The theme this year is smoke and mirrors. We're going to have a magician. We're going to have activations before the event. We're going to have an amazing auction, beautiful keynote speakers. It's a wonderful, wonderful evening for a very good cause. So I'm going to throw that in just because the pre-sale is ending in 2 weeks.
Ooh, okay. I might actually try and come down for that. It's the day after my anniversary, but this one's the fourth one. It's not.
I
It's
mean, just this can be
not a
like,
milestone.
no,
Yeah.
no, just be kind of like this is an extension of the
Yeah.
anniversary celebration. We will get you and Brian a cake. We'll do what Mr. Campbell did. We'll get you
Oh
a
yeah.
cake, and we'll say happy
Yeah.
anniversary. Yeah,
I
totally.
love it. Okay.
Yeah, well,
Awesome.
maybe
I'm
you have
in.
a Jai After Dark presence at the gala.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you everyone for listening. Please rate us 5 stars everywhere. We would absolutely love that. And write us a review if you can as well. And we will be back next week. In the meantime, if you want to contact us, email us at jaiafterdark@jaiafterdark.com and catch us on Instagram at jaiafterdark and Threads, jaiafterdark, and TikTok. So we are everywhere. Yeah, see you guys next time.
Bye.